Frank Warren was there. He's the manager of Derek Chisora, and in the past he's promoted David Haye, most notably in that fantastic domestic cruiserweight showdown against Enzo Macronelli a couple of years back. And Frank was there, wandering around, surveying it. He's the guy that came up with the idea and has been instrumental in making this happen as the promoter of Derek Chisora. And of course, one thing was back there today. We've seen it now four times, in fact, at 3 press conferences, and now today. The metal barrier, the builder's metal barrier that shields the two. Well, I'll talk a bit more about this later on. Until now, it's been a bit of a joke, you know, a bit of a joke gimmick, you know, just a silly prop, what's more, an unnecessary prop. Well, today, it suddenly felt real. Today, that barrier, I think, was stretched and tested. I don't mean anyone tried to push it. I don't mean anyone tried to lunge at the other fighter. But there was serious tension. Anyway, I spoke to Frank, and I asked him if the boxers will still need to be separated by a barrier come fight night.
We're going to not obviously take the barriers away, otherwise we'd be struggling, unless somebody wants to take up pole vaulting. I just don't want anything to go wrong. And, you know, things happen at weigh-ins. We've seen it so many times, and people think that, you know, promoters want all this to happen at a weigh-in, which is not the case. Two guys start butting, one of them gets a cut eye, the fight's off. But you've got to remember, they're athletes. They're at the moment mentally, physically. You know, it's a testing time for boxers. It's a unique sport, and you even see what happens on football pitches. I mean, times I've seen guys get off the floor, you know, head to head, got their heads on each other. Well, this is different. These are fighters. You know, this is what they do for a living. And, you know, from my point of view, and obviously from their point of view, you just don't want emotions to boil over, get the better of them.
And also, you know, there have been fights in the past where they've weighed in at completely opposite sides of the arena, even at different times to keep them apart. This at least brings them together. At the fight itself, a lot of confusion, not controversy, a lot of confusion the last 24 hours with this shrink from 12 to 10 rounds. Is there? I mean, what's the story? Was it always 10 and no one cared to ask, or?
No, actually, no one did ask. But the fact is, originally it was going to be a 10-rounder, and then the WBO and the WBA then sanctioned it for their titles, and obviously their championships, they should be, in my opinion, over 12 rounds. But it wasn't to be. The Haye camp didn't want that to happen. I'd like that, and certainly Derek would like that, but as I say, it's not happening.
When did they say they didn't want it to happen, or complain, or whatever words we're going to use?
To be honest, it's been behind the scenes. It's been going on for a few weeks, but it was on, I think it was over the weekend, Friday over the weekend. That's what we decided.
But Derek's last couple of rounds, I mean, he walked all over Helenius the last 2 rounds. He walked through Klitschko in the 12th round. I mean, I think those are good rounds for Derek.
Well, they are, but then again, you can look at the rounds against these sort of rounds 8, 9 and 10 where he sort of falls asleep a bit. So, you know, I think over 10 rounds the fight's going to be fought at a faster pace, because obviously mentally they won't be thinking they're doing 12 rounds. Derek's not fazed by it, and I think that's actually played, I think it's more to our advantage than it is to theirs, because I know that Derek does look for the big finish. So he'll be looking for the big finish earlier.
So he'll start earlier in theory.
If we're into the later rounds, you know, David Haye. You know, look, guys don't change. They're not going to. You know, David Haye's 31 years of age. You know what you've got. Fast hands. You know, I believe this fight is going to come out throwing. I think he thinks Derek's going to come to him, and that's going to cause them both to, you know, stand there and slug it out to start with. I believe that's where he's at. He says all these things. Will he do it? You know, people don't change. Leopards don't change their spots. He fights off the back foot. He's done that in every heavyweight fight he's had. I mean, he's even backing off of Aldi Harrison for 3 rounds. I mean, hardly a punch hardly was thrown for 3 rounds. Let's be honest.
The first 2 rounds were disgraceful.
So there was nothing thrown. So, you know, is he going to come out like he did with Enzo Macronelli? And let's get it right. It was Enzo Macronelli who forced the pace. He caught him with a really good shot. You know, and David, to his credit, come back, you know, throwing bombs. Derek starts off as he always starts off. You know, he's got a good work rate. He's in great condition. He's strong, good chin. You know, it's not going to be about what David does. It's got to be about what Derek does, and that's the key. in my opinion, to Derek winning the fight.
And finally, do you think that, I mean, I've talked to David, I've talked to people that have been around him, and I honestly think that they believe it's an easy fight. I don't think it's rubbish. I don't think it's hyping. I mean, I think they think it's an easy fight for them.
Well, he does, and I think one of the things he said yesterday at the press conference is key to it. Or he talked about how, you know, it won't be a big heavy like in the past where he's had to punch up or punch down on guys because Derek's not such a tall guy. But that works also for Derek. You know, Derek's not like we had to do against Klitschko.
He doesn't have to punch
get up
up.
there, punch up. You know, he'll be there to be a more comfortable level for him. So they do believe that. But then my guy believes the same thing. So, you know, obviously one of them is going to be proven wrong on Saturday.
One of them will be proven wrong on Saturday. Of course, it could always be a draw, as they say in the trade. Now, at today's weigh-in, Derek Delboy Chisora weighed 247 pounds, which I believe is 17 stone 9. Haye was 210 pounds, which is 15 stone exactly. But Adam Booth, we'll hear from in a second, he seemed to think it was closer to 14-12, which is his ideal weight. In David Haye's last few fights, his last fight was a year ago against Vladimir Klitschko, he was 210, same weight. He conceded on that night 32 pounds, so actually he's conceding 5 more pounds tonight. The fight before that, he fought Audley Harrison. David was 210.5 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, and Audley was 43 pounds heavy. The fight before that, David Haye came in really heavy, got it wrong. Not happy about that. He wasn't. He was 12 pounds overweight, felt sluggish, and was only 9 pounds lighter than John Ruiz. Still did a job on him. Of course, the fight before that, David was 99 pounds lighter. Of course, he was fighting the Beast from the East. And before that fight, there was a guy called Monty Barrett. That was a lively fight, about 6 knockdowns. David was 215 pounds, 15.5. Monty Barrett was just a little bit heavier at 226 pounds. Then there was the Enzo Macronelli fight where David was under 200 pounds. And then it was his first fight at heavyweight against a Polish guy called Thomas Bonin. He was 15.7. Now, David's not really moved then. We're looking at 210 through to 222. We're talking about 4 years, and we're talking about 7 fights with not a lot of movement. He doesn't play around with his weights. Derek at 247. He looked in good nick. David was talking boldly and bravely about how fat he is. Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. There wasn't a lot of flesh there. David thinks you could get 20 pounds off it. Scott Addington on Twitter says, what do you think of Chisora's weight? It was a surprise to me. Thought he would be lighter. Advantage Haye, Scott Addington asks. I'm not quite sure it is, Scott. No, I just think that that's just the way it works. I don't think it's you know, I think he was always going to be 20 odd pounds heavier. Now he's 37. Not a lot of difference really, 25 pounds. And Ian Smith says also on Twitter, I don't anticipate it lasting 10 rounds anyway. I'll stick my neck out and say Haye in 5 rounds. What are the odds on that? I'm hoping they're okay. And Mike Cotter from Birmingham also on Twitter says Buffer is wonderfully golden brown. You've got to have a look at it. You've got to see Buffer because he just looks absolutely fantastic. And Eric the Maulerbone also on Twitter says Bunsey, the Olympic direction signage at Stratford and Hackney Wick is non-existent. Expand, he asked me. I'll tell you, it's quite simple. There's no signs. I can't deny it. Michael Buffer, a lot of people looking at Michael Buffer and saying this guy just looks fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Glyn Leach, the editor of Boxing Monthly, wondering who does his makeup. Not the same guy that does your makeup. Thanks very much indeed